All right, let's dive into a really fascinating legal battle out of Arizona. It's a story about a homeowner who took on his HOA, went to court, and actually won. But here's the twist. What happens when that legal victory doesn't really have any teeth? That's exactly what this case is all about.
I mean, just imagine this for a second. You go through the whole process, you make your case, you prove you're in the right, and a judge officially declares you the winner. You feel vindicated. But then, you find out that the ruling can't actually be enforced. The court can't make the other side fix what they did wrong. It's this bizarre paradox we're going to unpack today. A win that feels an awful lot like a loss.
So let's set the scene. Our story takes place in a community called Starr Pass, and it centers on a homeowner named James Iannuzo. He got into a major conflict with his HOA, the Moonrise at Starr Pass Community Association, and it all started with an attempt to remove 2 members from the board.
The whole thing kicks off because of something called a recall petition. You've probably heard of these in politics, but they exist in HOAs too. It's basically a tool that lets the members of a community force a special vote to get rid of board members they're unhappy with. It's supposed to be a check on power, you know? And because of that, there are some very, very specific laws about how these things have to be handled.
Now, Mr. Iannuzo's case wasn't really about if the board member should be removed. Nope. His whole argument was about something much more basic, the process. He claimed that the HOA completely failed to follow the exact procedures that are required by Arizona law when handling the recall.
So what did the HOA actually do wrong here? Well, if you look at the timeline, it's pretty much a masterclass in procedural mistakes. This is the meeting that never actually was.
Okay, so check this out. Early June 2021, the HOA gets the petitions. Now, the law says they have 30 days to hold a special meeting, so they schedule one for June 30th, right at the deadline. But then, on the day of the meeting at 9:36 a.m., literally minutes before it was supposed to start, they cancel it. They claimed they didn't have a quorum based on the mail-in ballots. But then, it gets weirder. Almost 2 months later, out of the blue, on August 19th, they decide to hold a meeting to count the votes from the meeting that never happened.
And here's the real kicker. This is a direct quote from the HOA's own ballot. It says, crystal clear, this ballot is valid only for the special meeting scheduled for June 30th, 2021. Remember that part. It's really important.
So let's just break down the big mistakes here. First, they totally blew the 30-day deadline to hold the meeting. Second, they decided they didn't have enough people just by looking at mail-in ballots, completely ignoring anyone who might have planned to show up in person or, join virtually. And third, maybe the most obvious one, they counted ballots in August that by their own rules were expired.
All right, so with all this laid out, the whole thing lands in front of an administrative law judge. It all came down to how each side was interpreting the law. Mr. Iannuzo's argument was pretty simple. The law says you have to hold the meeting within 30 days. They didn't. Plus, the ballots they used were no good. The HOA, though, they tried to argue something different. They said, well, the law just says we have to call for a meeting within 30 days, not actually hold it. And the law doesn't say when we have to count the votes. See the difference? It's a tiny but super important distinction.
So, after hearing from both sides, the judge had to make the call. Was Mr. Iannuzo right? Did he actually prove that the HOA broke the law? This was the big moment.
And the answer? A big, fat yes. The judge's decision was totally clear, saying the evidence overwhelmingly showed that the association had violated the state law. For Mr. Iannuzo, this was it. On paper, a total victory.
Now, you'll see this phrase, preponderance of the evidence, pop up in civil cases like this one. It's not like in a criminal trial where you need proof beyond a reasonable doubt. All this means is that it was more likely than not that Mr. Iannuzo was telling the truth. The scales of justice just had to tip slightly in his favor. So, the bottom line is he won. The judge validated his complaint, and to top it off, he ordered the HOA to pay back the $500 Mr. Iannuzo had spent on the filing fee. You'd think that's the end of the story, right? Justice served, case closed. Well, not exactly.
Because this is where the story takes a sharp turn. That victory that seemed so cut and dried, it was about to get a whole lot more complicated.
I mean, it seems like a simple question, doesn't it? The judge sided with him, he proved the HOA broke the law, so what happened next? What was the problem?
Well, here is the problem. This is the absolute heart of it. The judge said that even though he agreed the HOA acted improperly, he had no actual power to fix it. He couldn't overturn the election results. He couldn't force them to do anything to make it right. His hands were completely tied.
And to make things even crazier, about a month after the ruling, the court sends out this notice, an advisement. And it seems to say, hey, yeah, we actually do have the authority to make the HOA comply with the order. You can just imagine Mr. Iannuzo seeing that and thinking, okay, finally, my win actually means something.
But that glimmer of hope, it didn't last long. Just a couple of weeks later, bam, a corrected advisement shows up. It's almost identical to the first one, except for one tiny three-letter word they added, not. The court officially, finally, clarified that it had absolutely zero authority to make the HOA do anything at all.
And there you have it. That's the final outcome. Mr. Iannuzo won his case. A judge confirmed the law was broken, but the illegal action was allowed to stand, the vote results remained, and the court itself admitted it was totally powerless to enforce any kind of real change. He won, but in every way that mattered, he lost.
This whole crazy story leaves us with a really big and kind of unsettling question that goes way beyond just one guy and his HOA. It makes you ask, what does a legal victory even mean? If a court can point out that something is wrong but has no power to actually make it right, what does that say about our system? Is a ruling that can't be enforced still justice?